Of course, we are live on X Spaces, on YouTube, on Facebook, and of course on myjoyonline.com. You're welcome. This is a post. Now let's start from the stables of the Defense Minister, Dr. Edward Omanibwan, because it revealed that nearly half of Army trainees may be withdrawn after audit found 46% of 452 recruits failed to meet enlistment requirements. Speaking at a Government Accountability Series today, he also disclosed that thousands of rounds of military ammunition remain unaccounted for following an irregular 2024 transfer from the Ghana Armed Forces to the National Security. The Armed Forces, he said, have formally requested an investigation by the National Security Secretary. Dr. Buama assured that such lapses in logistics and accountability would not occur under a John Mahama-led administration.
Security. It is with confidence and pride that I state that to a very large extent, Ghana is safe, stable, peaceful, and ready to experience a golden age under the reset agenda of His Excellency John Dramani Mahama. We have kept our nation safe and stable, notwithstanding the irregular transfer of thousands of rounds of military ammunition in 2024 from the Ghana Armed Forces to the National Security Outfit. Let me touch on missing ammunitions. I must say that, yes, it is not every detail that I can provide at this stage. But the fact that it's taking this long to capture it in this minute detail should tell you there must be a reason. If you go back to the President's State of the Nation address, 2025, he hinted at it. This is the next phase. But the reality is that to date, those ammunitions have not been accounted for. How the Ghana Armed Forces could transfer ammunitions to national security that doesn't have a fighting force in 2024 is a question that will definitely have to be answered. The Ghana Armed Forces has passed it on to the National Security Secretariat for the National Security Secretariat to investigate it, since they were the recipients of the ammunitions. But what we are doing is, under our watch, under our watchful eyes, any such incidents will not be dealt with like the way it was handled in the past. So whilst we have encircled this and handed it over to National Security for National Security to handle, whatever will fall within our domain from January onwards, trust that we will deal with it the way the military knows best.
And of course, we'll stay a little longer on this matter relating to the Defense Ministry, because on recruitment, Dr. Buama revealed that the last recruitment into the Ghana Armed Forces was conducted in 2021. However, an internal audit has uncovered that 2,872 Army potential recruits who successfully completed the entire selection process were never taken through training under the previous administration. He says a new recruitment process will be done and encourage all qualified candidates affected by the previous administrative delay to reapply.
This we are confronting. Let me first acknowledge with candor the Ministry of Defense, like all critical institutions of state, inherited substantial constraints in January 2025, some of which continue to test our resolve daily. We inherited a staggering institutional debt burden of over 3.7 billion Ghana cedis. Debt that was recently uncovered by the current military high command of over $32 million owed by the Ghana Armed Forces. These legacy debts continue to constrain our ability to invest adequately in critical defense priorities and warfare infrastructure. Alongside this, we are contending with a 17,000 unit accommodation deficit for our brave men and women in uniform. These are not just figures. They are realities that affect operational readiness, troop morale, and the dignity of service. Let me assure you, these are not lamentations. They reaffirm our determination to resolve these problems, first by acknowledging that they exist and deciding that never again should the government mismanage the nation's economy to this depressing level. We are fixing the challenges. Our well-designed programs are working. It is important to report at this stage that the last recruitment exercise for soldiers, non-officers, so the soldiers go to the Army recruit training schools and the various training schools, the officers will go to the Ghana Military Academy. So I'm done with the officer career. I'm now moving to the soldiers. It is important to report, let me repeat, at this stage, that the last recruitment exercise for soldiers, non-officers, was conducted in October 2021. However, the audit has revealed that 2,872 Army potential recruits who successfully completed all required processes, including documentation, medical examinations, and vetting, are yet to undergo training. Meanwhile, my visit to the Army Recruits Training School just last week disclosed the fact that the Army Recruit Training School has not been training recruits over the past 17 months. With the potential capacity for the Army Recruits Training School to train between 900 and 1,500 recruits every 6 months, a maximum of 3,000 every year, we wonder why the past administration allowed the situation of the 2,872 Army potential recruits to crystallize. Knowing that even healthy people die during military training, how can we rely on laboratory tests conducted years ago or over 6 months ago to recruit? How can we rely on body selection and fitness tests conducted years ago to inform recruitment decision now? Additionally, with the passage of time, many have exceeded the age limit. Considering all these significant factors, it has been decided that a new recruitment process will be conducted. I wish to emphasize that there were over 2,000 potential recruits who could not undergo training under the previous administration, even though vacancies existed at the Army Recruit Training School, are strongly encouraged to reapply, provided they still meet all the established criteria.
Well, the minister also added that the investigative report into the killing of 7 persons who allegedly attempted to breach the Anglo-Gold Ashanti security fence is ready, but is unable to disclose its content now. He says that John Mahama administration will not shield personnel found culpable in military brutalities.
Take it from me and take it from the Mahama administration. We will always treat crime as crime. We will not shield anyone. There is a report that has come out of the investigation that took place there. The outcome of the investigation is clear. Do I want to speak to it at this stage? No. However, subsequent actions will let everyone know what the implications of that particular investigation is.
Well, another matter of concern to a lot of Ghanaians is the Boko matter. Now, Dr. Boama admits the security situation in Boko and Alavanyo remains volatile. Now, Joy News Research Review, the defense budget has surged over 60% lead data and research analyst here at Joy News, Isaac Kofi Ajay, joins me in the studio as we go through the issue of the budget. We'll also be looking into the issue of recruitment and the unaccounted for ammunition when our guests join me in the studio to discuss the implications of this, especially those who've had some military training but will not be able to be enlisted into the Ghana Armed Force. What will come of them? Will they be added on to the already, serious situation of having people with military training but jobless, and then they are convinced into undertaking unlawful activities? We'll explore that and more. But first, let's talk about the defense budget. And Kofi is right here in the studio with me. So, Kofi, what do we have?
Well, Elton, usually they say that a well-functioning defense system is directly proportional to the expenditure.
Right.
The perfect example is the US and other countries like Russia and China, who spend significant components of their budgets on their military. When you come to
Ghana, the US, we're looking around 645 billion United States dollars.
That is a huge amount.
But that is the biggest. If you put Russia, China, and UK together, they still don't come anywhere near the US military spending.
So it means that they treat their defense with that sort of importance. And in Ghana, if you actually sample or look at the top 5 ministries or areas that we spend the most, definitely education
health, always number 1.
But defense will never leave when you're looking at the top 5. And in fact, in 2025, this year, the amount government wants to spend on defense is about 6.4 billion, Ghana cedis. And if you take it to dollar terms, we're talking about, let's say, roughly $640 million. Compare that to how much US is spending on military. It means that there is more room for improvement, but definitely because of our population and other areas that we focus on. But the reason why we decided to look at this expenditure is because of what is happening in the northern part of the country. And the president's, assurance that definitely there will be some 12,000 recruits this year. They are just waiting for the assurance and clearance from the finance ministry to go ahead with that. Now, we didn't just look at this figure in isolation. In terms of capital expenditure, if you listen to the defense minister, what you see is that the defense system of the country really lacks capital. Especially, he spoke about accommodation and what have you. And usually they depend on donor support to actually build some of these facilities and all of that. And if you look at this big figure, you may think that, well, 6.4 billion is huge. But about 89% of that goes into wages and salaries. So it means you have just about
11%.
Yeah, 11%
to take care of
capex, administrative cost, and all of that. That is woefully inadequate. So let's try and understand this more. The reason why this is important is that 64% increment we are seeing in the defense budget is relative to this 3.9 billion allocation we saw in 2024.
So there's been almost 100% increment.
Absolutely. And we have been doing the math, and what you see is that the average has been around, let's say, some 38% increments almost every year. But this time around, we are doing 64% increment in the defense budget. And that is definitely an outlier. We did same in 2023, it was around 68%. But this is how the country's defense budgeting has been like since 2016. And definitely you see this 2025 figure being unprecedented. 6.4 billion is what you see there. Now, in terms of the northern part of the country, the reason why that is important is that there is that northern security. I'm talking about the border security that the government allocates a certain amount of money to every year. Last year was around 200 million Ghana cedis. But this year, we understand that although defense budget will be around 6.4 billion Ghana cedis, just about 100 million Ghana cedis will go to the northern border security as a budgetary allocation. That is 100% slash from what we saw in 2024. But the most important thing is that significantly, 84 or 89% of the 6.4 billion defense budget
will go into the payment of salaries.
Go into the payment of salaries and wages.
So how do they take care of equipment, infrastructure development, and the other things that come to make, our defense quite tight? Now
you're talking about CAPEX, right? And definitely if you look at this data, it simply tells you that CAPEX allocation is very, very small. So usually governments would depend on donor supports, right? And programs from other multilateral and bilateral arrangements to actually close some of these gaps. So in years that we are not able to attract some of these monies or funding, our defense system, it becomes a bit, exposed in terms of capex, not in terms of its, strength or what have you. But in terms of the budgetary allocation, when it comes to capex and other accoutrement, usually it is from donor support and some bilateral and multilateral arrangements. And definitely, we are hoping that this year we could get more. But the bad news is that we all know what is happening in the U.S., where budgetary allocation to African countries have been reduced.
Right.
Even the UN, for instance, is battling with a slash in terms of its budget because of the decision that the U.S. has taken. And so it will be interesting to see how we are going to fare this year. But the most important thing is that we possibly need to close that gap when it comes to capex expenditure, because this data tells you that about 89%, let's say 90%
going into
budgetary
payment of salary. But I'm curious to know, we've got the mid-year review coming up. Do you have the sense that perhaps government may be asking for more money to spend? Because in fact, I've been speaking to some state institutions, the heads of state institutions. For example, the scholarship secretariat, for example. And the information I get is that they only spend after the presentation of the mid-year budget. Does it indicate that perhaps government will be asking for more money to spend? That's the reason why some state institutions have been asked to put all programs on hold until after the presentation of the mid-year review.
The reason why we are seeing it in this form is that government really wanted to use the first 6 months of the year to test how the economy will go.
Right.
Now we understand that the city, is stable. We've seen fuel prices coming down. Inflation is now around 13% and all of that. This is a good assurance for government to go into the mid-year budget and possibly start spending. Because we understand the reason why BOG held that emergency monetary policy meeting was to consolidate and then also look at the broader data and give it to government to inform the decision that the finance ministry was going to look.
Right.
So the projection is that starting from we're already in the second half of the year, but after the mid-year budget, the projection is that expenses will start coming in, government will start expending. Already the president says that they have the assurance and clearance from the Ministry of Finance to start employing more people, not just in the defense side, but in other areas. And so government will go ahead to do more expenditure, possibly in the second half of the year, especially after they have seen how the data has fared in terms of government expenditure and all of that. And many have said that the reason why you have inflation coming down and the city performing well is that government has been very, very tight and fiscally disciplined in terms of what they want to spend. It's also important to know that in terms of even arrears, you have about 62 billion sitting on the books of government as arrears clearance that they need to pay. We understand that most of this amount of money has not been paid. It's just the road sector that enjoys some 4 billion in allocation. The analogy or the projection is that after the mid-year budget, government will go ahead to spend, and we'll see how the economy will respond.
Thank you very much for coming through. But, me and you have been looking at the Auditor General's report for 2024 that was just released, and already the figures we are seeing doesn't call for comfort.
In fact, we are talking about 18.4 billion Ghana cedis. That's about 1.8 billion US dollars. In financial irregularities, and significant component of that came from the energy sector. And again, ECG was in the mix. It will be interesting to see how that will also go. But we'll bring you all the updates and every data that's actually in the latest Auditor General's report.
Thank you very much, Kofi, for coming through. And of course, that is something that we are also looking through. So in the days to follow, we'll have more time to digest the Auditor General's report into state-owned enterprises, into corporations, boards, into secondary, tertiary institutions. Every sector of the economy will deal with that matter. Well, it's good time to bring in security experts joining me on via Zoom, and of course, as always, privileged to have you, Professor Kwesi Enin, who is joining us. We'll also be speaking to a former Deputy Defense Minister, Mr. Kofi Amankwa Menu. Mr. Menu, if you can hear me, good afternoon and welcome to the pulse. If Mr. Menu, if you can hear me, if you can unmute for me so we can hear you. Good afternoon, welcome to the program.
Good afternoon, my brother. Good afternoon.
Great to have you here. So you heard the defense minister at today's accountability series, if you like, and he spent some time on the recruitment into the Ghana Armed Forces. And I'm curious to know why you will recruit people and will not give them training. They said about 2,000 people recruited, they've not been trained, and he doesn't even know what to do with them. What will be your reaction to the minister?
Thank you very much, and good afternoon to your listeners. I think that, yes, before one starts training, there are certain procedures you have to go through. And when you go through all these procedures, you need commitment or commencement from the Ministry of Finance. So yes, the military prepared all these men waiting for commitment from the Ministry of Finance, commencement which we did not get. And so without a commencement, it becomes difficult to commit the soldiers to go into training when you don't have the budget to support them. So with the 2,872, this is my explanation. There is no way one will ask people to go through all the necessary processes for training only to leave them. No, nobody will do that. But after doing all that, you also need commencement from the Ministry of Finance, commencement which never came before we went in for the elections.
So because you didn't get a financial clearance, that's the reason why you couldn't move it to the next step?
Precisely the point. Precisely the point.
But isn't it necessary that you get that clearance before you even open the space for people to apply? Knowing very well that they will be taking through all the steps for
So we had all the promises. So we were advised to start with the processes. We had, the promises from the Ministry of Finance that yes, we could start with the processes, and then when they are done, definitely we're going to get the commencement. But when that process was done, the Ministry of Finance then came to say that it was a bit late, and then we were very close to elections and all that, so they couldn't give the commencement. At that point, there was nothing one could do.
The minister's, solution to deal with this matter is to get them to reapply. But he makes the point that some of them have already exceeded the accepted age, meaning that in terms of the provisions under which one can be enlisted into the Ghana Armed Forces, age-wise, they are not ineligible. Now, these are individuals who've gone through some level of the steps to get into the Ghana Armed Forces. It is possible that when they reapply and they don't meet the age criteria, they will not be taken.
We have steps one will have to go through to start training. If you do not meet the criteria, obviously you cannot go for training. So if time has elapsed and these people who were supposed to have started training do not now, if we're going to have a new process done and they do not meet the criteria, they do not meet the criteria. This criteria is set by the Ghana Armed Forces. And so if one does not meet the criteria, one does not meet the criteria. It's simple. It's very simple.
And the difficulty I have here is that this will not be the doing of the applicants. The doing can be traced to the fact that you didn't get a clearance to go. So they are being punished for, something that they did not do.
My brother, let me say this, and let me be very emphatic, that I have always, as much as possible, stay away from politicizing security in this nation.
Right.
That when the very moment you begin to go that route, you get it all wrong. Let us do the right thing for the people of this country and for the Ghana Armed Forces. Let us not begin to apportion blame. Yes, we did not do it. Yes, we did. If you did not do it, and then those who now qualify within the criteria set up by the Ghana Armed Forces, then if they qualify, let them go through it. Let them go through it. If people do not qualify, they do not qualify, please. It is sad when, people want to politicize security. I really have a difficulty in doing that. Most of the time I refrain from going that route. But trust me, if I sit at where the minister sits today, I will do that which is right for the Ghanaian people and for the Ghana Armed Forces and will never politicize issue. My brother, let me tell you something. We've had ministers in the past. All the ministers came to meet problems in the ministry. But because of the sensitive nature of the ministry, you have to have a very nice way of dealing with the problems and not run to the public domain for solution.
Right.
When you do that, you get it wrong. Dr. Adokufo took over from the NDC. We never heard anything of this nature, but Adokufo came to meet problems.
Right.
General Smith took over from the NPP. We never heard things like this. But General Smith obviously met problems.
Right.
The Honorable Nitiwu took over from the NDC. He came to meet a lot of problems, many. But there was not once that he went into the public domain with the problems of the Ghana Armed Forces. My brother, the Ghana Armed Forces is an institution that we all have to fight to ensure that its sanctity remains intact. The very moment we begin to go to the public domain with the problems, of course, there are certain problems the public will want to know and the public will need to know. So yes, that we can. But when we begin to politicize the issues of the Ghana Armed Forces, we may get it wrong. The
minister says he's being transparent and accountable to the people. How does it amount to politicization?
All the ministers that I have mentioned were very transparent. They were very transparent. If the minister today is seeking to be transparent, then he should not pick and choose. Because when it gets to where everything will have to come to the fore, nobody should be blamed for politicizing the security of this nature, because everybody has a name to protect and everybody will want to be transparent as much as possible. Everybody will want to do that. I sat there as a deputy defense minister. Trust me, my foremost duty was to make sure that the sanctity of the Ghana Armed Forces remain intact.
Okay.
And so I wasn't going to run to the public domain with any problem that came my way. No, I wasn't going to do that. But yes, I also had to be transparent. I have always believed that as a minister for defense, your work will show in how you conduct yourself and how you run the ministry, because we are talking of the security of our nation. I am not saying that there are no problems. I have listened. In fact, when you were playing, I was listening with accommodation and all that.
But we'll come to that, because I know that under the Akufo-Addo administration, the modernization of the barracks was key on the agenda. And I remember, as a former presidential correspondent, we went to the president to inaugurate some of these housing facilities for the military. But the minister says that housing is still a huge challenge facing the Ghana Armed Forces. So, it begs the question, so what exactly did we do in the last 8 years to now have to face the same challenge of providing accommodation for the military personnel?
So my brother, if you look at the history of the Ghana Armed Forces, I was having a conversation with a friend one time, and I said that if you ask me, the challenges of the Ghana Armed Forces were not actually looked at. And so they were left, their challenges were not met. And so they were left to be on their own for a very long time. And so any government that comes in wanting to deal with the issues of the Ghana Armed Forces, no matter what you do, will be a drop in the ocean, because this is an institution that has many problems which have not been attended to in the past. And I am glad you are mentioning the kind of infrastructure the Akufo-Addo-led government undertook for the Ghana Armed Forces. That, trust me, was unprecedented. But again, anyone will say it as being a drop in the ocean, because the accommodation gap was so huge. So yes, that I admit, that is a problem that as a nation, we all have to fight to make sure that the soldiers, men and women in uniform, get, a decent accommodation. I expect the minister, yes, that is a problem. He has to continue. In fact, just before we left office, we signed an MOU for the construction of a 2,000 units for the Ghana Navy. I expect the minister to go ahead to ensure that we are able to do some of these things for our men and women in uniform. When we are able to do this, then we will be dealing with the issues and not to run into the public domain, you know, anytime you encounter a problem under the thinking that you are being transparent. No minister has been under that in that ministry and not be transparent. No minister, because if you know the architecture of the Ghana Armed Forces and how the Ministry of Defense is run, you will appreciate the fact that you cannot be there and not be transparent. You simply cannot be.
There are a few issues I would like to pick your brains on. First, the minister makes the point that during your watch, under your watch, I'm under you because you were the deputy minister, together with Dominic Nitiwo, they had this issue of, let me quote, irregular transfer of ammunition to national security yet to be accounted for. Perhaps you can bring some clarity to this matter for us, because this is quite sensitive.
My brother, there again, it is very difficult for anybody to sit and say we cannot account for some ammunitions or anything of that sort. Because whenever delivery, as the military takes delivery of ammunition, they have a meticulous way of taking records, keeping records, and all that. And so anything and everything that moves from every stage, there should be some accountability, or there should be proper records of all that.
In this case, the minister says thousands of them cannot be accounted for.
That I will beg to differ. If thousands of that cannot be accounted for, that did not get to the Ministry of Defense. And you and I know that these things are managed by the Ghana Armed Forces. And these things are managed by people who have the expertise to manage them. And for me, accounting for these things will not be so difficult at all. My brother, anytime national security needed any help, they fell sometimes on the Ghana Armed Forces. And even the Ghana Police. Even the Ghana Police. And so tracing all these things wouldn't be a difficult situation at all. It would not be difficult at all. Yet 6
months into the administration, they've not been able to trace the ammunition and what it was used for. 6 months. And this is coming from the sector minister.
This should be the work of the minister to find out that, okay, so where did this go? And once they have records, this will not be a difficult thing to really do. It will not be too difficult at all. Knowing where, a gun or an ammunition went, who took what did it use for me, this wouldn't be too difficult a thing to do. And so I find it a bit absurd that the minister will run to the public domain with some of these issues. Because this, for me, if you ask me, this really is just the ABC of managing the ministry.
Because it's
just the ABC.
Because probably he's not getting the answers that he needs. That's the reason why he's taking it to the public domain.
I will find it difficult if the minister will not get the answers he needs, because he is the minister and he should get the answers. When the records are there, who is going to tamper with the records?
All right.
Once the records are there, as the minister, you have every right to call for those records. And so I will find it a bit laughable that the minister cannot have access to those records. Then there is something really wrong somewhere.
Mr. Man, kindly hold it from. Let me bring in, of course, as always, a privilege to have you, Professor Christian. Prof, good afternoon. Welcome to the program.
Good afternoon.
So you've been following the conversation. I mean, before I brought you in, we're talking about the minister makes the point, and I want to quote him directly. He says, there's been irregular transfer of ammunition to national security from the Ghana Armed Forces. 6 months into the administration of the Mahama government, thousands of them yet to be accounted for. Does it sound bizarre for you, Prof?
No, far from it. Unaccounted ammo and weaponry is a problem that all armed forces face. And I think at the Kofi Annan Center about 3 or 4 years ago, we held a meeting with retired senior officers and our colleagues from Small Arms Survey of Geneva, looking not only from Ghana, but from Africa as a whole, levels of leakages, both from legitimate stockpiles and alternative stockpiles. So unaccounted for ammo and weaponry, I mean, it's not something new to armed forces at all.
And the former deputy minister says that the minister should be able to get all the answers again. He doesn't even think that he should take this to the public domain because all the records are there. And yet, that, like
I beg to differ. You know, similar to going, recruiting people, training them, and saying that the Ministry of Finance didn't release the funds. The procedure of budgeting for the military is that it takes place during the Ministry of Defense presentation of its military expenditure estimates to Parliament, which starts with a formal request by the Defense Financial Controller, okay, to the service heads and to the Ministry of Defense. That is then submitted to the Ghana Armed Forces headquarters and subsequently to the Ministry of Finance. You know, so it's almost impossible for the recruitment to be done and then for Ministry of Finance to say, we don't have the money. Because it is a close partnership in determining what will come to the military, you know, before these figures are made known. So something might have gone wrong. But otherwise, you know, it's a fairly routine process. The military will say, we want X amount of money. The Ministry of Finance will say, no, we can provide 2 minus half or 0.5. You know, so there is always a clarity around this. But I think the former minister sits on the Committee on Defense and Interior and possibly on Security and Intelligence. And I think this is a conversation that they can have, both in terms of the men who have been trained and the ammunition that cannot be traced. We will be taking the Small Arms Baseline Survey that seeks to understand levels of leakages and the competence of stockpile management in this country very soon.
Prof, let me read these quotes. Perhaps you can help us reconcile. So, in February 2025, during the presentation of the State of the Nation, the President Mahama says, and I quote, "As Commander-in-Chief of the Ghana Armed Forces, I want to emphasize our determination to strengthen democracy. This is particularly true given the troubling proliferation of military-grade weapons that fell into unauthorized hands under the previous administration. These weapons pose a significant threat to our national security and constitutional democracy, endangering the safety of all Ghanaians and potentially exacerbating existing conflicts such as chieftaincy disputes and armed robbery." This was in February 2025. Now today, the Minister for Defense says we have kept our nation safe and stable, notwithstanding the irregular transfer of thousands of rounds of military ammunition in 2024 from the Ghana Armed Forces to the National Security Outfits, ammunition which have since been unaccounted for. These two statements, I mean, I don't know whether it leave you in a state of confusion, or they are all speaking the same language.
They are all speaking the same language, and it's part of a trend that we see in this country. Let me go back to the Ayawaso West War on violence. During the short commission of inquiry as to who these balaclava-clad individuals were, it was obvious they were using equipment, both vehicles, clothing, weaponry, ammunition, paid for by the Republic of Ghana. But all the security ministers who appeared before the short commission basically told the commission that they didn't know where these guys came from. Okay? So it raises fundamental questions about the establishment of alternative armed groups in this country by incumbent governments that within Parliament does not know about as the oversight institution. So the presence of military-grade weaponry in civilian hands is mostly found in 2 or 3 places: at Accra Dollar Power, and certainly when the Boko crisis always explodes. We know that they are using military-grade weapons. But more disturbing is the fact that the 6.4 billion that we are happy about is also a drop in the ocean as compared to.
In fact, over 80% is going to the payment of salary.
Yes. So if you look at what is being used to equip and train and retool, it is a fraction of what Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger are using for their armed forces. So Ghana is way off the map. But I'm hoping that we can have another occasion where I will actually break down the historical figures of our military expenditure. Until recently, probably 15, 20 years ago, we were putting in less than 1% of our GDP into our military expenditure.
Right.
If you take out housing, electricity, water, and the basics, almost nothing is left to defend this country. So the 2 statements from February and July tie in quite well. And I know that when Mr. Menu was deputy minister, they had attempted to build these 9 or so forward operating bases as a response to the assessed external threat to this country. So I think he himself recognizes that we cannot have a military that is underfunded, under-equipped, under-trained, that also has international demands on its time in terms of peacekeeping. But whatever the minister has raised today, I think are issues relating to the transparency.
Right.
We can all talk a lot about helicopter acquisitions, tank acquisitions, the quality of those tanks, the quality of the equipment that were brought. But this is not a debate for the larger public.
All right.
Okay, because one doesn't want to sow fear. But there are serious issues that we need to discuss openly with our military, learn from the lessons of the previous past leadership, and then to prepare ourselves to face any unexpected challenges.
Let me pick your few minutes on this matter of the recruitment. Now, we have over 2,000 individuals. Most likely, they may not get a chance to serve in the Ghana Armed Forces because, one, they've exceeded the age limits. And the reason cannot be the fact that when they applied, they were above that age limit. The reason being that government could not get the finance ministry the clearance that was necessary to get them to go through their training and be enlisted. That the minister said they will have to reapply, and already the condition of age already disqualifies them. And here we are. How do we move forward in dealing with this thorny issue of recruitment into the security agencies?
Yeah, so here I want to go back to what Mr. Menu said with respect to Dr. Kwame Adukufo. When Dr. Kwame Adukufo became the Minister for Defense, we had all kinds of irregular people who had been infiltrated into the Ghana Armed Forces from the revolutionary days. The NPP regime then managed to demobilize and reintegrate them into society very quietly, pay them whatever they were supposed to be paid. Now, these people have not been formally, recruited into the Ghana Armed Forces, given all the training that is necessary. But they can be demobilized, told that, look, it is not possible for being made to wait. This is the X percentage of whatever you would have gained for 3 years of service. Thank you very much for willing to put your lives on the line for the Republic of Ghana. This is a technocratic problem, and it must be solved technocratically within the Ministry of Defense. This shouldn't be any difficulty at all. But be that as it may, it should never be possible that we go through the process of budgeting for X number of individuals who need to be recruited, only for the state to turn around and to say the Minister of Finance has refused. That is bad budgeting, and that is bad leadership, and it demoralizes the troops. Finally, we also do know that retention is becoming a problem. Because although being recruited into the armed forces is fascinating, that levels of attrition in the last 10 years is between 5 to 10% sometimes. And that is quite a high figure of people who have been trained who suddenly find out that they don't want to be in the service. So the minister's concerns, I would argue, are apt. We are talking about transparency. This is an oral process which every institution must insist on, and then we can have a conversation around the issue that the minister has raised. But these are weighty issues that we shouldn't brush under the carpet. So kudos to the minister.
And are we ever going to have a merit-based recruitment?
I think we are heading there from what the president said, decentralizing. The military has its, format for recruitment, what qualifications you must have. And I think if we take out this canker of, the protocol enlistment,
right?
Because we know people who have been protocol enlisted, who were not healthy enough, who were not fit, only to go for the training and then lose their lives tragically. So let's do the right thing. Let's decentralize. Let's allow the armed forces to have that diversified structure and composition that is reflective of the Republic of Ghana, and build the loyalty that we are looking for so they can serve this country.
Prof, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. I appreciate it as always. Let me bring in Mr. Kofi Manu, former Deputy Defense Minister. Mr. Manu, do you have any reaction before I pick your brains on the budgetary allocation to the Defense Ministry?
In fact, I was going to address that. So yes, it is true. I agree with Prof. So beginning of...
if you can kindly unmute for me, Mr. Manu.
I have done that.
Great, please go on.
So before the beginning of every budget year, you present your needs and all that to the Ministry of Finance. But there is something that we must all vet our minds to. You are able to do all that you want to do if, when you present your budget, the monies are released to you timely. But in our case, it is not so. And so, yes, you present the budget and all that. In most instances, even when you present a certain budget to the ministry, you'll be lucky even to have half or more than half of the budget. And so you always have to, have the balancing act of doing things to make sure that you also keep body and soul of the Ghana Armed Forces moving.
Right.
And so every now and then you have some of these things happening. But for me, I agree with Professor Enin. When we have issues, it is not every issue of the Ghana Armed Forces that we have to run into the public domain with. Because, trust me, if we are not able to keep the sanctity of the Ghana Armed Forces intact, we'll have problems in this country. We'll have problems. If there are problems, yes, we have to deal with it. Professor Enin mentioned what Dr. Adokufo did. I don't think this was, a rush into the public domain with all these things. Some of the things, you do them quietly, because when it gets into the public domain, another dimension will be added to it, a dimension which will not inure to the benefit of our country in terms of security. That is why I say that in dealing with security, it is less talk, more work.
All right, let's leave it here for now. Mr. Kofi Manu is a former Deputy Defense Minister during the administration of Nana Akufo-Addo. and we'll be dealing with the matter of the Defense Ministry based on the news conference that the minister had this morning at the President's Day Jubilee House. Let's take a short break and return with more here on The Pulse. You're welcome back. This is The Pulse. Of course, your comments are welcome here via social media handles on X Spaces, on YouTube, on Facebook, and of course, on myjoyonline.com. Now, lecturers in Ghana's public universities are threatening to do what? Withdraw their services if government fails to urgently address the environmental destruction caused by illegal mining. UTAG says its members are alarmed by the devastating impact of Galamsey on the environment, water bodies, and public health. The association believes that the government current response is inadequate and is demanding stronger, more decisive action. UTAG warns that without tangible progress home, its members will be left with no choice but to lay down their tools in protest. Let's bring in the president of UTAG, Professor Akudugu. Prof, you're welcome to the program. Good afternoon. Yes, Prof, if you can hear me, Prof. Mamadou Akudugu, if you can hear me, good afternoon. Welcome to the program. But we'll try and see if we can get Prof back on the line to understand the reason why they've taken this action as of now, because this will not be the first. In fact, in the run-up to the 2024 election, UTAG took a similar position, but they had to back down, and I will find out why this action this time, and of course whether this will work. Let me see if we can get the attention of Professor Mamadou Akudugu. Prof, good afternoon. Welcome to the program.
Good afternoon to you, and good afternoon to your viewers, and thank you for having me.
Right. So why now? Why this time?
Well, maybe the questions would be, why not now? Anyway, we think that the time has come for us to really take this issue of Galamsey seriously. Mm-hmm. And it appears that we just talk and then we go back to bed, sleep, and then the business continues as usual for those illegal miners.
Right.
So we strongly, after reviewing what the government has done over the past 6 months, we strongly believe that we needed to remind His Excellency the President of the commitment he made prior to becoming the President of the Republic.
And you don't see the commitment by government to deal with this matter? Government has taken some steps.
Of course, we acknowledge those steps that government have taken, but we just are of the strong opinion that those steps are not, they are not far-reaching enough to reach or to create the kind of impact that we are looking for.
What exactly is UTAG demanding? What do you want to see done?
We want to see Galamsey absolutely, completely eliminated. We want to see our water bodies regain their integrity. We want to see our environment get back to its statutes. We want to see the health implications that are beginning to emerge in Galamsey communities and even communities outside the Galamsey areas. We want to see those emerging ailments reversed, and we want to have a country where there is rule of law and there is respect for our environment, and there is that commitment to ensure that we hand over as inherited from our forefathers an environment that can guarantee the survival of future generations.
But you do recognize that, I mean, in the last 6 months that this government has been in office, they've taken some steps. Some companies have had their mining licenses revoked. They've inaugurated River Gas. The head of MIF, that's the Mineral Investment Fund, she's always been out there seizing excavators, even though after seizing them, the next day, more of them will vanish. police officers have been transferred in mining areas to other areas to create some semblance of a government that is interested in getting to the root of this. But from UTAG point of view, what really did you consider to be the main issue why we are unable to get a handle on this very matter?
You know, all the things that you've mentioned, yes, government has done them. Even the minister reported to us that within 4 months, they made some 600 arrests. But the question is, where are those people now? Have they been prosecuted successfully?
Some are facing prosecution. The foreign ones among them, some have been deported.
Is it within the context of the law to deport wrongdoers?
Well, that's the directive the Minister for Interior gave, that foreigners arrested in mining areas should be deported, and that is what the immigration officers are complying with.
But the question is, if you can commit a crime, they send whatever they do here, the money is sent back to wherever they come from.
Right.
And therefore, when I'm caught, I can be deported to go and enjoy my loot in my country. That is not the best way to go. But beyond that, what are the numbers that have been deported? How come that we continue to arrest even minimal foreigners in the Galamsey areas? And how come that we continue to have this Galamsey going on even in residential areas, despite all the things that have been done? And so we acknowledge the fact that the government has shown some level of commitment, but it is just not far-reaching enough to be able to achieve the kind of impact that we are looking for. And so we, as researchers and as people who deal with data, we felt that it was important to remind the president that prior to becoming president, he had signed and made some commitments to what exactly he needed to do to be able to bring this under control. And we don't seem to be seeing that on the ground. And so therefore, he should go back to the drawing board and revise his notes, and let's get this work done and done expeditiously.
And from your body, from the academia, is there data or research result that points to how devastating this thing is? Because you introduce that word in most in this press statement. Are there evidence-based results that we can point to say that based on this and that is the reason why we are motivated to take this step?
The evidence abound. A recent work by one of our colleagues, I've forgotten the name, on testing the presence of heavy metals in cassava in some part of the eastern region, revealed very alarming results of presence of these heavy metals in these foodstuff. I think colleagues in KNUSC has also done some works on deformities or mining-related deformities in children, and that is also there. Most importantly, the evidence also is clear that at the moment we do not have a system that removes heavy metals from waters. So what the Ghana Water Company does or treats the water, they only treat the water for turbidity and for the impurities, but not to remove the heavy metals. And these water bodies have been known. If you look at the recent data from the Ghana Water, the Water Resources Commission,
right,
you realize that the level of contamination is far beyond the levels that the machines that are used by Ghana Water Company were designed to purify. And so for the evidence is all over the place, and even just visual inspection of what is happening. You see in most of these Galamsey areas, the use of drugs becoming very rampant, teenage pregnancies, children are abandoning school to go into these illegal activities. What is the future for those children who have left school to engage in these Galamsey activities and all the rest of it? So the effects are there for all of us to see, and we fear for the country if we continue to play the business as usual approach with dealing with this canker. The minister described this as environmental terrorism.
Right.
Terrorists attack you. What do? You don't do engagements. You don't do. Some of the things that we do.
Right.
You go out full force to neutralize whatever terrorist attacks that you are facing, and so we expect that to be done. The president recently mentioned that Galamsey has become a national emergency. When you are faced with an emergency as a country, what do? You don't go with the business as usual. You don't go appealing to people to just obey the laws. But the fact even is that these people that we are talking about are not even in those Galamsey areas legally. They don't even respect the law.
Right.
They are in illegalities. And so people that do not respect the law, you cannot get rid of them using the law. You may have to, use some operations. You cannot do that by legislation, because legislation already exists and they don't obey it. So you have to enforce, and to enforce that you need to be very tactical and kind of be unconventional in some cases in dealing with that situation.
Prof, my final question, in the run-up to the 2024 election, you issued a similar statement. At the end of it all, the threat to go on strike did not materialize. So I ask again, should we trust you that this time around you will see to the end of what you are intending to do?
The University Teachers Association of Ghana in 2024, September, October, thereabout, we made our plans clear that if nothing serious was done, we were going to proceed on strike. As member of organized labor, we got organized labor to, join. So we joined forces with other unions to get this done. Last minute, organized labor decided to chicken out, but UTAG proceeded. We declared a strike action in October 2024. And the only reason for suspending that strike action was because we got the presidential candidates. We reckoned that, yes, the government, the Akufo-Addo government was left with just a few months to go. And so we needed to be futuristic in our fight.
Right.
And so we want the presidential candidates to sign a pact committing to Galamsey. And that is the pact that we are reminding His Excellency the President that he should make sure he should work to fulfill the pact that he signed with us. And if it doesn't work, UTAG, we are not known to declare, to threaten to do things that we don't do. If we don't get significant actions that will lead to elimination of Galamsey in the country, we'll definitely go through with our threats if need be. And I know our members will not disappoint.
Right. Professor Mahmoud Akudugu is president of UTAG. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. Awula Sewa is with Eco Conscious. Awula, so you've heard UTAG, they say that they got the presidential candidate to sign on to a pact. As far as they are concerned, the NDC administration is not delivering on what they signed on to. The reason why they've threatened to embark on the strike action. After a lot of people say that as a country, we are not angry enough. The reason why, this matter is still a topical issue.
I would say that we are not angry enough. We have been told that the number of kidney disease has quadrupled. The district president has said all that needs to be said. We need to understand that we face an existential threat. The president, His Excellency, the president himself, has admitted that we face a national emergency. We are dealing with environmental terrorism. So as a matter of urgency, we need to send our armed forces to the hotspots and to deal with the environmental terrorists and their equipment, remove them from the forest reserves, the land space, and also our water bodies. As we speak, the once beautiful Ancombra River has turned brown, it's been diverted, and we have no information that anything is being done to address the situation. So I think that it's about time that we took decisive action before it is too late. We are on the verge of an environmental catastrophe, and we need to act now before it is too late.
Remember that government, some commitments that were made in opposition, are you, the NDC is in power now, do you get a sense that they are living up to expectation?
You see, we, eco-conscious citizens and others, made specific demands. The specific demands were to declare a targeted state of emergency. That has not been done. Another specific demand was to revoke LI 2462 and even EI 144, which declassifies parts of Achimota Forest. But for the purposes of this conversation, LI 2462, a low-hanging fruit, the president promised he would do this. This has not been done. Recently, Honorable Sami Janti said that when Parliament returned from recess, it would be revoked. It hasn't been revoked.
Right.
Then we also asked for all those named in Professor Frimpong Boateng's report to be investigated. We believe that is, we've been promised that will be done. We also asked for a pause in all sorts of small-scale mining, whether community mining, whatever you want to call it, because we are not monitoring. And because our monitoring regime is either non-existent or weak, it is leading to difficulties. And in some of these cases, it's just illegal mining going on. And I have to say on this program that we have activists in Atronsu who were fighting illegal mining, who were fighting the poisoning of their landscape and the Atronsu stream. Believe it or not, they rather have been charged. They rather spent about 6 days in custody, while the illegal miners did not spend a single night in custody. So when we have this sort of situation going on, it becomes a mockery of the whole justice system. And one wonders whether our fight is against the activists or against the illegal miners.
All right, we'll leave it here for now. I was going to ask, last week, for example, the Attorney General directed Yoko to investigate 2 leading members of the NDC and also take into consideration the content of the Professor Frimpong Boateng's report. At least it is giving some life, isn't it?
Definitely, investigating those named in Professor Frimpong Boateng's report is a step in the right direction. Remember, regarding the 2 people who were named, the only concern is that other people were mentioned a very long time ago, including, for instance, the Iowin MP, who is alleged, I use the word advisedly, alleged to be involved in illegal mining.
Right.
We are not being told that he's being investigated. And because we have a pattern of, for example, as I said in Atronsu, it's rather the activists who have been criminally charged while the illegal miners are walking free. One wonders what is really happening. But we trust IACO to do their investigations. A man is innocent until proven guilty, and we'll see where the investigations lead. But we still are asking for a targeted state of emergency. We are still asking for the repeal of LI 2462, and we are still asking for a pause in small-scale mining. All
right. Awolasawa, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Of course, Galamsey will not go away and will continue to raise the issues until we have finality to this environmental, disaster. Now, let's stay a little longer on matters relating to the land, because hope has been renewed for residents of Blekusu and surrounding coastal communities in the Ketu South municipality of the Volta region, as President Mahama cast the sword for Phase 2 of the Blekusu Coastal Protection Project, offering long-awaited relief to areas battered by tidal waves. Now, addressing residents, chiefs, and stakeholders on Saturday, the President hailed the initiative as a clear sign of responsive leadership and reaffirmed government's commitment to tackling a problem that has plagued the coastline far too long.
Your cries have not been in vain. Your voices will no longer be ignored. Today is your day, a day of renewal and a day of reassurance. Togbiro Mamao, Ghana's coastline stretches for over 550 kilometers. And this is one of our country's most critical assets because it supports the livelihoods of our people through fishing, through trading and tourism. But it's also among the most vulnerable to the devastating effects of climate change, particularly coastal erosion and tidal wave flooding. What is happening in Blekusu, Salakope, and Agaveji is not isolated. Similar tragedies are unfolding along other parts of Ghana's coastline, from Adana to Anglo, from Cape Coast to Axim, and we cannot continue to turn a blind eye. This project we are about to cut short for will bring relief to communities of Blekusu, Agaveji, Salakope, Amutinu, and Adina. The project represents our national resolve to defend our coastal communities and preserve lives, homes, and infrastructure. Under this second phase of the project, Messrs. Amandi Holdings Limited, the contractors, have been contracted to execute work over the period of 2025 to 2029. The project will deliver a total of 8 kilometers of robust coastal protection, comprising of 37 groins, dune restoration, reinforced embankments, and other shoreline defense infrastructure. And as the minister just told you, in addition to the coastal protection works, we're incorporating community infrastructure that will boost the local livelihood of our people. And this includes a modern fish market, cold storage and processing facilities for the fisher folk, fish drying and places for smoking fish, a car park and a lorry station, public sanitation facilities will also be provided, and a waste collection system will be put in place. So this is more than just a coastal protection work. It is a comprehensive resilience initiative, blending environmental protection with socio-economic infrastructure. W.O. Mamao, to ensure the success of this vital project, we must all play our parts. And therefore I call on the Ministry of Works and Housing and Water Resources, the Ghana Hydrological Authority, the Kedu South Municipal Assembly, the contractors and consultants, and above all, the chiefs and people of the beneficiary communities to work together in unity and purpose to achieve this all-important project. Let us uphold the values of accountability, transparency, and community engagement throughout the project implementation. And I urge everyone, especially the youth, to take ownership of this project by respecting the construction zones and timelines, by avoiding harmful activities such as illegal sand winning, by promoting environmental education and coastal stewardship, and by helping to maintain the new infrastructure once it has been completed. I wish to inform you also that the Waka project.
Well, so that's President Muhammad. But let's explore this matter because it is very important. The lives at stake. Chief Executive Officer of the Ghana Hydrological Authority, Dr. Sylvester Darko, joins me via Zoom. Dr. Darko, good afternoon and welcome to the program.
Thanks, and thank you for having me this afternoon.
Great. So, Blekusu,
good afternoon to your cherished listener, US as well.
Great.
Thank you.
Great. So, Blekusu may be getting help. But Blekusu is not the only place that is at risk of being run over by the sea. What should be the long-term solution to this issue?
Yes, thank you very much for the opportunity to join this channel to contribute towards the resilience, making our coastline resilient. If you may be aware, climate change and climate variability has been on the ascendance, and our coastline is not exonerated from this impact of climate change. And so, as a result of sea level rise, climate variability, as well as some anthropogenic activities, a lot of our coastlines are threatened, especially with regards to sea level rise as a result of climate change. So as the president indicated, the coastline of Ghana is over 550 kilometers. And a lot of these locations from western region, Azim, through central Adan in the greater Accra region, to Blekusu, Denu, all the way to even Aflao, are all threatened by coastal erosion as a result of this devastating climate change and climate impact. And so over the years, a lot of work has already been done at certain locations in western region, in Azim, Anomabo, Abuade, Cape Coast, Takrade itself, New Takrade, Adan in Greater Accra, and even K2, and then recently Blekusu. So a lot of work, but there's still a lot to be done. In the sense that over this period, out of the 550 kilometers, approximately 90 kilometers have been covered, leaving over 300 and something kilometers to be covered, over 400 kilometers to be covered. And
that's a long way, and that's a long way to go.
That's a long way. So that's a long way. But often the problem is that, the cost of this infrastructure is quite intensive, capital intensive. So government is rolling out programs, to cover as many places that are threatened by these coastal erosion, coastal flooding as a result of climate change, as much as possible. Apart from the structural or engineering structures that we are bringing in, we are also looking at some form of what we call nature-based solutions, to be able to complement the hardcore engineering structures that we do, because we believe that the nature-based solutions also have a very effective way of protecting our coastline.
Last year, for example, or last 2 years, when I spoke to the authority, they painted quite a very bad picture of what is to come if steps are not taken to protect the coastline, to the extent that all the way from the Volta region stretching to parts of the Greater Accra to the central to the western region, from the information we got, structures and people on that particular stretch, all of them were at risk. In fact, mention was made of the fact that even institutions like Adisade College and the rest were at risk of being submerged if steps were not taken to address the effects of the waves. I want to find out, we are in 2025, is the situation still the same, or something has been done to limit the impact?
Yes, so like I told you initially, work has been ongoing for quite some time now. Way back, it dates back to even in the 90s, where the Kita Sea Defense Project started. So over the years, those critical areas, and critical areas that host our infrastructure, or the towns and villages that are at risk most, are actually assessed and then provided with the protection. So, for instance, places like Cape Coast Castle, and all the forts, some of the forts along the coast are being protected. Even at Abuade, the thermal plants has some form of protection. So it's an ongoing situation, it's an ongoing work, ongoing exercise that government is rolling out. And I'm sure all the critical areas that need these interventions, will be dealt with in due course.
Yes, please go on.
Yes. So the interventions are, cut across the various regions, the coastal regions, so to speak. So it's an ongoing process. It's an ongoing exercise. So we will continue to assess the situation and then take the needed step technically to be able to ensure that our coastlines are protected. Even whilst we do that, we also do some form of education, so that the communities that are at risk, will also take the necessary measures so that to protect themselves, whilst we come in with the hardcore engineering solutions.
And I'm wondering whether the authority has put a cost to this. In terms of costing it, how much do you think is required to comprehensively address this?
Yes, we are actually, I said, because as years go by, the rate of devastation, also changes because of the changing nature of the causative factors.
Right.
So, for instance, it is estimated that the coastline is eroding or being affected by erosion at a very alarming rate. So today, if it is about 50 or 20 meters, before you realize it could get to 30 meters, which means that the costs will continue to rise.
Right.
So it is very difficult to really estimate exactly, for the entire coast, how much we need at the moment, because as we go on, the processes that are resulting into this impact or this erosion are ongoing. Therefore, the cost will continue to rise if we do not do something about it as we move forward.
And you get a sense that the commitment is there to deal with it?
Yes, I have a strong commitment that there's strong sense that there's a stronger commitment on the part of government to deal with this. In fact, that is the more reason why when this crisis started coming, the Ministry of Finance gave the authorization, financial authorization, and then subsequently the approval by the PPA and all the processes that have to be gone through faster for us to be able to move fast to initiate the process so that the people along that coast, will be safeguarded. And so I have a strong sense of belief that government has a very strong commitment towards this.
All right. Dr. Sylvester Darko, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. He is the head of the Ghana Hydrological Authority. Now, in the heart of Accra, a unique structure is turning heads and then sparking conversation. The toilet Moabi. Now, blending basic sanitation with small-scale commerce, this unconventional facility is fast gaining attention as one of the city's most unusual places of convenience. Now, designed to provide clean, accessible public toilets while creating space for micro businesses, the toilet mall can be described as a response to Accra's ongoing challenges with sanitation and informal trade. Now, here is Ghana News Agency report.
In the heart of Accra's central business districts, a unique public toilet facility is causing a stir, not because of any controversy, but because of its name, Toilet Mall. The two-story facility near the Makula Market is not only catching eyes with its unconventional branding, but also winning hearts for its cleanliness and other services. In a city where access to clean and safe public restrooms can be a challenge, one man's idea to add a little flair to sanitation is making waves. Here within the Makula Enclave stands the Toilet Mall.
If you are doing something, you have to get some name or attract people, but even to not just the name too alone. You have to make sure that the facility and then the way you are handling the place, you get with the name. You get me? And that's exactly what we did.
The facility, opened just 6 months ago, features 32 toilet seats, bathhouses, and a waiting area with a television set.
It's good, not bad. The patronage is not all that bad. It's good. People are coming, they are comment that no, they encourage us. It's fine, but we have to keep it neat the way it takes. But you see, people open toilet new like this, and then later on it turns different thing altogether. So we take their advice and we make sure that we do what they want, not what we want. That's what they want. So we have to do it to attract them. Some even come before that. They are first time people. They come also with their friends. So I think it's very nice. It's very nice. It's very nice. If you don't come before, you can come and have a look and see her. There's no scent, nothing. Everything is neat.
But But that's not all. Soothing background music plays inside the stalls, giving patrons a surprisingly relaxing experience.
Fine pa waya de waya ne neat eti me de bia me ba toilet ne de waya de papa no waya de we ne amecheko me hu ba bi be ne wa fe other one say ni yo mumu because that one say fa bi ene hu fa e wo me ba bi ene wa. We have everything neat, nice, and that place is very neat, gentle, smelling good. So everybody should come to toilet more.
Me kwala ke ka ba ma na sha patane abia toilet yo for again. Me no am na ke toilet. Na me la ke bangi. Me ka o je bangi ni si toilet. Lo me bi ba bi o me on su e bi e lo me bi ba bi o me aga. Toilet am na lo ni ka ke na me ka am la ke bangi alo office ko. Lo na me bo do me am ke mi e friend wa no e jo le toilet ni e je o ya private ata music o na mi se toilet no money ma toilet wo jole le za ma mo ni egbele mi ni Ghana fe for your toilet ko me ye ni ka te mi yin kwala se ne mi che.
According to patrons, the facility offers a sense of dignity and comfort rarely associated with public toilets, and many of them return not just because of the convenience, but because of the name. With public support growing, Toilet Mall is setting a new standard and changing the face of public sanitation in Ghana. From a funny name to a serious solution, the Toilet Mall proves that a little innovation and cleanliness can go a long way in improving public sanitation. Certainly an unusual name, but a welcome change to sanitation standards in the city.
From the toilet mall, let me take you out of the shores of Ghana, because the U.S. President Donald Trump announced a plan to have European countries buy billions of dollars worth of U.S. military equipment that can then be transferred to Ukraine. How are European leaders reacting to this? Let me cross to Thomas Paro, correspondent with our partner DW in Berlin. Thomas, how was this Trump plan received in Europe?
There have been mixed reactions here in Europe. On the one hand, there are several European governments, including the German government, that have supported the move, essentially saying that this means that Europe and the United States once again can work together when it comes to supporting Ukraine, saying that it essentially means that both Europe and the United States are on the same page, and essentially also saying that this can help move beyond the previous ambivalence that many considered the US presidents to be showing. So that's one side of the debate, but there has also been criticism by European governments, also within the European Union institutions, who say that essentially that support should not only mean sending US weapons to Ukraine, but also financial support. In other words, sharing the burden between Europe and the United States. There has also been considerable criticism from governments, including the French government, who have stressed that it would be important for Europe not only to buy US weapons and US weapons systems, but also to invest further in Europe's defense capabilities. So as you can see, there is definitely a big discussion here on what this essentially means. But in general, you can say that it is seen as a step forward when it comes to Europe and the United States working together towards supporting Ukraine.
Well, so this comes as European countries, including France and Germany, have major plans in place to boost defense spending. Can you give us more details on these plans?
The French President Emmanuel Macron recently announced a big increase in defense spending for his country. And in the case of Germany, that is also something that has been developed in the last few months. In particular, in the case of Germany, it's important to stress that Germany's defense spending will be exempted from debt limits here in the country, from the so-called debt brake. And this is a massive change for Germany, for a country that was not only reluctant in the past to increase its defense spending, but that also has been historically reluctant to public debt. So as you can see, a big move here from Germany, a big move also from other European countries. But it's important to stress that not all countries see this in the same way here in Europe. Most countries did commit to increasing defense, specifically when it comes to that 5% NATO target. But some countries, for example, Spain, have been more critical of that move. So within the European Union, there are different views on how this should be approached, what this essentially means, also what this essentially means going forward in the next few years. But in general, most European countries have indeed considered the possibility and are also moving ahead with plans to increase their defense spending.
So what about the citizens? Are they on board with this massive defense spending?
This is actually very interesting because it differs not only in different European regions, but within European countries specifically. So it does seem that many European citizens understand the need for European Union institutions, but also for European countries to increase defense spending, to be better prepared for international threats. But there are definitely countries, and there is certainly part of the population that see this with concern and that see this critically, not only because of what it means when it comes to spending. For example, there are those who say that money should be actually spent not necessarily on weapons and weapon systems, but more on infrastructure, education, health system, and so on. But also what it means in terms of Europe's capabilities. Again, the issue of France, and many in France that think that it should be spent more on European defense systems. So there is a general understanding that Europe and European Union institutions need to move forward when it comes to this common defense. Yet at the same time, there is criticism and concern. Here in Germany, 50% said, according to a recent survey, that they supported that 5% NATO target, while at the same time, a third of German citizens said it went too far. This shows again that there is a big debate within European societies about what this essentially means for the future.
All right, Thomas Sparrow with our partners at DWTV, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Folks, that's our show for today. Whatever you are up to in the hours ahead, I hope it's profitable. For more stories, log on to our website, myjoyonline.com. My name is Elton Brobe. Same time tomorrow, we shall be here. Good evening.